Did you know that speaking is a motor skill? And sometimes kids have a hard time with the motor skills needed to speak clearly. In this video, we'll review what motor speech is and what you can do to help. This is an important message about the following content. Please pause and take some time to review. Now, you're probably here because there's a child or a young person in your life whose speech is difficult to understand. Let's start off with how we speak. Speaking starts with a message or a thought in our brain. We turn that message into sounds, words, or sentences and speak them out loud. But there are a lot of things that happen in between thinking and saying. First, our brains need to plan the sounds we need to say. We control our muscles and parts of our bodies, like the lungs or our jaw, to move in a specific direction at a specific speed with specific strength and to a specific point. We need to coordinate these movements at precisely the right time to say the words we were thinking. This is motor speech. Motor speech is the in-between, what happens between thinking of the message and saying it out loud. Motor speech is the planning, control, strength, and coordination of movements required for speaking. We usually speak without even being aware of what's happening in between. Let's define motor speech in a bit more detail. Planning for motor speech movements happens when our brains give our muscles and parts of our body a plan of how to move, when to move, and how quickly to move from one sound or one word to the next. We generally don't think of these types of plans. We have to have the right amount of control and strength over our muscles and body parts to actually do the plan our brain tells us to do. And finally, we need to coordinate our movements and move in the exact right order at the exact right time. Remember, we're always talking about moving because speaking requires movements. Let's think of the word glasses. Our brains plan the sounds we need to say. We control our muscles and specific parts of our bodies to move in a specific direction, at a specific speed, to a specific point with a specific strength, all coordinated in the perfect timing to say glasses. Let's think about the movements just required for one sound. Just to say the ah in glasses, we need to move air out of our lungs, vibrate the vocal cords at a specific rate, have our jaw and tongue in a specific position, and we're not even aware of all of this. And all of that is just to say the sound ah. Any changes to the plan, control, or strength in ah might make it into another sound. Oh. Let's listen to a little bit about control, strength, and coordination when typing the word hat.
If there is an issue with control, I may have my fingers on the right keys ready to type hat, but I'm unable to press the buttons due to the overall weakness or damage to the muscles or brain pathways that tell our muscles what to do. If I'm having a hard time with planning, I might type KEP because I have a hard time getting my fingers to the right place they need to be. If there is an issue with coordination, we may plan to type hat. However, our fingers do not move in the right order, and we may type ATH instead.
Motor speech is the planning, control, strength, and coordination of movements. We can think about it as what happens in between thinking of our message and speaking that message out loud. And remember, motor speech is generally subconscious, meaning we're not even aware of all of those things that are happening in between. Speech language pathologists can assess and identify motor speech disorders or difficulties. Here are some signs that a speech language pathologist may look for. You may notice the child was quiet as a baby or had reduced babbling. Reduced could be less babbling overall or babbles that didn't sound different. So instead of banama namama, you might have heard ba 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 ba. Another sign is when vowels and sounds are not accurate. So by becomes ba if the vowel is not accurate, or bi might become pi if the consonant is not accurate. Motor speech difficulties make it harder to say words with multiple syllables. So, water is an easier word to say than watermelon. Sometimes syllables might be stressed differently. So, instead of watermelon, it comes out as watermelon. Speakers have difficulties moving from one sound to the next. This sometimes looks like their tongue, jaw, or other parts of speech are sliding or fumbling to get into the right position. It may sound like syllables have a gap in between them, so watermelon sounds like wa-ter-mel-lin. You may notice differences in other areas of like motor development, language, or literacy. These are signs SLPs are looking for during assessment and sometimes treatment. A speech language pathologist can assess and determine if a motor speech disorder is present. So, why do some children have difficulties or delays in motor speech? It's different for all kids, but in general, we see that there might be an issue with control and strength. In this case, there's an overall weakness or damage to the muscles or the brain pathways involved. This can happen when there are changes in the brain and nerves which change the way muscles work. It can happen at birth or after an illness or injury. Or the way children plan and coordinate movements is insufficient, usually with no known cause. Their muscles are not weak or damaged. They can control their muscles, but the way they plan and coordinate movements is inefficient. So, we know what motor speech involves and why delays might happen, but it's important to know what motor speech is not. Motor speech is not because a child is lazy to talk or doesn't want to behave. Difficulties or delays do not happen because a child is not smart or has low intelligence. And motor speech is not because of a psychological problem or personality, like being shy. So, what can you do about motor speech? It is possible to learn strategies to help with control of movements or learn more efficient ways to plan and coordinate movements. Let's come back to our typing example. We may need to use a keyboard where the keys are not stiff and easier for you to press down. We might start with words that use specific fingers or letters before we get into long words or typing sentences. We may even start with 2-finger typing before using 10 fingers. We might work on specific words or sentences and type those really, really well without even thinking about how your fingers move. Your speech therapist will assess and determine what the best plan is. Remember, when we start to practice motor speech, we make it easier at first to help your child learn new sounds and movement patterns. I want to talk to you about one last thing, what you can do about motor speech. First, we know that children who have motor speech difficulties have unclear speech, and the best thing you can do in this situation is model clear speech. You can model by saying messages slower, stretching them out, or saying them a bit louder. Listen to me do it. Modeling is a great strategy to use at any speaking level. We want children to have clear speech, so we model. Next is talk to your SLP. Your SLP or speech language pathologist will assess and work with you to determine the best type of therapy and the best plan. That was a lot of information. I hope you have a better understanding of what motor speech is. Thanks for learning with us.